So, how has the year started for you overall?
It's good overall. I did most of the work that's coming out now before the new year. I finished the Austrian Death Machine album because of vinyl manufacturing. I had to finish it like way back in, I want to say November, and now I've just been waiting a little bit and trying to get organized on my side. I'm producing a few other projects, but those aren't ready to come out yet.
Okay, so you've been like very busy now.
Yeah, I like to stay busy. It's hard for me. I think it takes a toll on my own mental health and my relationships if I don't keep myself busy because I have an overactive brain.
Okay, so that's why you're working pretty much like nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, I try to find a balance, but for the most part, busy is better for me.
So obviously we are now talking about like Austrian Death Machine and the latest album from you came like 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
after when it came out, I guess you sort of like stopped the project.
Yeah, I mean, not naturally, where things were at in my personal life, there's a big gap of time. And then, I've had the opportunity to do an Austrian Death Machine record since about 2017, but I didn't feel like the timing would be good until I just had a little more time out in society under my belt. And I think that people find it pretty distasteful for uh, a person who's previously been incarcerated to like be telling jokes or like having fun or being silly. And I think that that's an important and normal outlet for all human beings across the planet, regardless of what trauma you've caused or been through yourself. But I just think the timing was kind of weird until more recent times.
So 2017 was the time that you sort of like got the inspiration again to start working with an album.
Well, I think that's where some of the earliest ideas came from because just as a guitar player, and a lot of people don't know this, I am a guitar player when it comes to writing music and in the studio and stuff. I just don't play guitar on stage because I'm just not talented enough to play guitar and sing as aggressively as I do at the same time. But yeah, just as a guitar player, I would just be writing riffs and I would be like, oh, that would be a great Austrian Death Machine song someday. And so then I would keep them in my voice notes or in a recording session on my computer, and they just have sat around for a long time. Um, and then it wasn't until last year that I finally started compiling my favorite ideas.
Okay, so it's been quite long process for you then.
Yeah, which is very different than the previous three Austrian Death Machine records because with those, I would write them and record them all within about a month of time because everything was just sort of like, you know, oh, I feel like doing a record. I own a recording studio. Let me just sit down and make this happen. And that's how I would do it back then. And there would be very little preparation on purpose because I wanted it to stay fun. And this time around, it wasn't that I was trying to make it less fun. It's just that I had so much more time on my hands over the years.
So was this more also like a collaborative effort than the previous three were?
Yeah, I think that, well, the first one was hardly collaborative at all. And same thing with the second one for the most part. And the third album, I Triple Brutal is when I started to collaborate rather than just reach out to somebody to do a guest guitar solo. Sometimes that person would be somebody to say, well, why don't we actually just write the whole song together? Um, and then this album here is the first time I put together what I consider like the band, because I've written the previous albums primarily by myself or with a guest, but this time I actually have a band. And some of these guys are guys that I have played with or known for 20 years. I mean, my friend Mark McDonald, he's done guitar solos even back in 2008 on the original Austrian Death Machine recording, but now everybody's like officially part of making this come together, and it feels a little bit more exciting that way.
Was it like a very different process then for you?
It was because I had people to answer to, and by that I mean I ultimately still maintain the final decision on everything in Austrian Death Machine, but I would not uh solidify a song until I sent it to the guys and said, "Hey, what do you think? Could something be better?" And it's the first album I've had that type of feedback on.
And the album is like quite obviously heavy, and I would say that it's like the heaviest that you've done with Austrian Death Machine. So was there like some type of reason why it ended up being heavy?
Well, the other guitar player, Corey Walker, he previously played in Of Sulfur, and he comes from like a more modern deathcore mindset. And so I co-wrote some songs with him, and naturally those songs are going to come out, a little bit more modern and heavier. He's also significantly younger than me. And I think that that's an asset for me because I get a perspective I would normally never consider as a songwriter. I tend to write everything very thrash oriented, or of course, with the metalcore styles of melodies that I have with As I Lay Dying. But some of the more modern style production is not something that's difficult for me. It's just something I don't typically think of as like a first option when writing a song. And he's somebody I really respect, and he adds a lot of very interesting input.
So do you feel that it was also like due to the times that you had to live through that also affect somehow the album and the end result?
With the material I write for As I Lay Dying, I tend to write about my personal life experiences. It's almost like a therapeutic journal, the way that I write the lyrics and everything. And then with Austrian Death Machine, it's so thematic oriented, based off of a concept from a movie or a bodybuilding quote from Arnold or something. So it doesn't always like reflect, what I've gone through in recent years, but I do think the music itself sort of reflects more diversity because I've just been through so many different life experiences and picked up my guitar in so many different times, over so many different months. So the sound is way more diverse as a result.
So what about the lyrical concepts? Were they like inspired about some specific movie, or where did you draw the inspiration to them?
Well, because the album's called Quad Brutal, and for culturally, for at least for most English speaking countries, when they hear the word quad in the gym, you think of your quad muscle, your quadricep muscle. And so I wanted the album to feature Arnold's legs bulging muscles, and then have a lot of the songs be bodybuilding related as a result, to sort of tie in that whole theme. And historically, I've done most of the songs have been based off of specifically like Arnold's 90s action movies, because that was the era that I really loved Arnold's movies the most. And I don't want to steer away from action movies entirely, but I do want to have like a little bit of a bodybuilding emphasis on this one. And also, I think there's some funny things like within the bodybuilding community, like just common phrases that people say, and to hear Arnold say those phrases, as he's already said in the past, like, hundreds of times, it's a nice little crossover.
Is it like difficult to decide the Arnold parts for the album? Or do you already have like a lot of ideas which were like that you just need to choose which are like the best ones in the end of the day?
Sometimes it's like what fits the song best. So there's like one of the most famous Arnold phrases of all time is where he says, hasta la vista, baby,
Yeah.
you know, and that's just an amazing phrase that I've just never found a song that fits. I eventually will someday. And then other times it'd be like a little bit more of an obscure phrase of his. Like the second song on the album is this really inspirational, it's like a very serious quote that he has. The meaning of life is not simply to exist or to survive. It's to go forward and to conquer, right? It's like very inspirational, and it's not super catchy, but the song that I was writing at the time was like so heavy and dark, and really it just felt like this modern Viking anthem, and so I was like, oh, I really want it. This song feels like Conquer to me, and so even though I knew that phrase wouldn't be super popular, I wanted to write a song called Conquer anyways.
So you obviously have quite a lot of guests on the album. So when you started like writing the album, did you already knew that you were gonna have a lot of guests?
Yeah, that's just been the tradition with Austrian Death Machine since the first album. Is I'm a good enough guitar player to write, I think, good songs for this genre of music, but I've never been a great solo or lead guitar player. And so even though I do write, some overdubs and solo concepts here and there, I usually, or not usually, I always have a better guitar player redo those for me. And so, that's the origin of all the guests for Austrian Death Machine. And then, like I mentioned before, now this far into making the albums, I have the opportunity to actually co-write the songs with some of these guys from time to time, which is a nice change of pace.
Do you always like know the persons beforehand who you are gonna invite for the album before you start even writing it, or does that like process like evolve during the writing?
I try to keep Austrian Death Machine just so fun oriented that I typically like to only work with people I'm already pre-existing friends with, but sometimes it'll be like a friend of a friend, right? So like when I did some songs with the bodybuilder Craig Golias, he was friends with Angel Vivaldi, and I consider Angel Vivaldi a friend of mine as well. But I had not previously like I think we may have crossed paths a few times over the years touring and stuff, but we didn't really know each other very well. Craig said that if there's any guitar player in the world that he could have do a solo on his like debut metal song, it would be Angel. And I said that's perfect because I'm a huge fan of his.
Okay, and that's happened like that way.
Yeah, that song happened that way. And the other songs were people that I already had known beforehand.
So now, since you have a band or for this, will you plan on actually playing shows also, or what does the future hold for Austrian Death Machine?
Yeah, so we're gonna do 10 shows in Europe, or maybe it's only 10 days. It might only be 8 shows or something like that. But we're gonna do a relatively shorter, like 2-week long tour in Europe starting in May. So that information should be announced pretty soon, and that'll be a first time ever for Austrian Death Machine to be in Europe at all. And then we'll plan more US dates. But since it's like an actual band now, we're just gonna have these early experiences and see how they go so we can determine what's next if we want to do some festivals or longer tours. But it's just nice to like be able to tour, and we're gonna test the waters with this first tour.
In the end, a little bit about As I Lay Dying. So I read it was like November or October or something last year that you said that you had started mixing the upcoming album. So I assume that it's already done and in the can.
So what's interesting about it is the mixing engineer has a few more songs to finish, not because he's lazy or anything, but because we always end up like adding a layer or a couple things here last minute. But he's been mixing it since I first said that in November, but then with the holidays and everything, there's a little bit of a break. Long story short, he's still fixing a few things, and we definitely have the albums scheduled to come out this year and some tours that are already booked to follow that. I just can't announce those tours yet.
Okay, so but the album will be out in like 2024.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be because we have album release tours booked, so it's definitely going to be out this year.
Okay. That's enough for me. So thanks a lot, Tim, for once again taking the time to talk to me, and all the best for the future. Anything you want to say as a closure to all the fans worldwide?
Well, first, thanks to you for staying up late and making this interview possible, and thanks for putting up with the technical problems to get it started. In terms of the fans, I'm just really thankful. There's been a lot of years in my life where I thought I might not ever have a chance to play music, publicly like this again. And the fact that I have a chance to be playing music right now, and it's truly the thing that has helped me in life more than anything else, get through all the difficult times and everything. I'm just truly grateful for that. And if there's ever an opportunity for me to write a new album, I'm going to keep taking it until people don't care anymore. And right now, a lot of people seem to care, and I'm very thankful for that.
Hey, Tim, thanks a lot for taking time.